coming off that ACL that he tore last year, which actually is one of my first concerns for the team going into this third preseason game. Fletcher Cox, only big name on the defense to not play a snap so far this preseason. As far as that safety spot I just mentioned, Cyprian and Sendejo are pretty much the top contenders for the safety spot opposite Malcolm Jenkins. Some other things to look forward to is Asante Brown and TJ Edwards. They played well last week against the Jaguars. I'm expecting them to push Jerry and Grugier Hill for the reserve spots behind the starters. My only concerns offensively is that the starting unit outside of running backs has not played at all. No Wentz, no starting O-line, no starting receiving core. So I'm hoping that, they at least touch the field tonight. I'm not holding my breath that they will. I understand the concerns of Wentz coming back from injury, and you want to keep everyone as healthy as possible. But like I said earlier, a lot of these teams are not going to play starters at all this preseason, and it looks like Wentz and company will fall into that category. Some funny news here. Well, not really funny, haha, but funny, interesting. Carly Lloyd, U.S. women's soccer national team, was at Eagles practice this week and kicked field goals of 35, 40, and 55 yards. Hello, Chicago Bears. Moving on.
Not just the Bears. The Browns apparently have a kicker problem. The Jets have a kicker problem.
Cowboys.
There's a bunch of kicker issues. Hey, Carly Lloyd could solve
because
them.
Brett Maher is absolutely atrocious. He can't make anything within 30 yards. He can only make stuff from 50 yards plus. Anything shorter is 100% miss. It's ridiculous.
Oh man! On to the Baltimore Ravens. Center/guard Bradley Bozeman has stepped into the first team line play after injury to Jermaine Illuminor. So he'll get some more time with the starting unit. Other things to look for tonight, cornerbacks Anthony Everett and Maurice Canaday. Since Trayvon Young has been lost for a period of time, look to get more snaps to fill that spot. Also, Cyrus Jones and Brandon Carr could see more time covering slot receivers as well. Wide receiver Michael Floyd has looked interesting in camp thus far. He with Seth Roberts and no other name here. Seth Roberts has basically missed some time due to injury, so he's not practiced much as well. Dalen Mack, defensive tackle, is looking to make the roster in that final defensive line rotation spot, but he hasn't had enough snaps to prove it, so hopefully he'll get some tonight.
All right, perfect. Hey, Justin, I remember you were on this show. How you doing over there? See, even Justin fell asleep. He's got the Green Bay Oakland game, which is being played at Investors Group Field in Winnipeg. Let me just make sure. Justin, you still there? No, he's not. This game is kicking off at 8 p.m. Since Justin isn't here right now, why don't we start with the Hard Knocks stuff? Because I know, James, you watched Hard Knocks just like I did. Monty had a few things to say because Monty's been, I gotta say, Monty's been a little angry lately. Has anyone noticed that? It's really.
I don't think there's enough Xanax in the world for him right now.
He's really had an attitude, but here's what Monty had to say about Hard Knocks. It's almost like you can't trust what you read on Twitter anymore. I mean, Adam Schefter tweeted that AB was all set to walk away from $43 million over his grievance with the union, per source. Seems plausible. AB seems like the kind of guy that saved all his pennies and has no need for any more money. It's not like he walks around California in full-length mink coats and commutes to work in hot air balloons. He, T.O., and Ocho Cinco probably started a bank somewhere and are ready to settle down and collect a cool 12%. Now, I am being tagged with tweets that the AB drama is tearing the organization and the locker room apart. Mayock is putting out ultimatums, and Gruden is furious. Is that what you saw last night, PodVader? Looked to me like people were waiting in line to give AB a hug. Gruden was singing happy birthday to Mayock, and he and AB were playing grab butt as they walked off the field. Don't get me wrong. I get that Mayock and Gruden are media savvy, and they are almost using this Hard Knock season as a free agent recruitment video. hey, come to Vegas next year. Look how much fun we're having. They're only showing us what they want us to see. But come on, the NFL media machine is trying to make this into a thing, and it really isn't. AB jacked up his feet. We all saw the photo. He hasn't been able to practice. Got it. I know we're all ready for the season to start, but let's not believe everything that gets tweeted. AB wants to use the same helmet that put him in the Hall of Fame. The league has to pretend to care about player safety. Otherwise, they stand to lose a lot of money. Check. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Not sure why they're moving the goalpost with this 10-year loophole. But at the end of the day, if you think AB is going to retire because he has to wear a new helmet, I have an island called Greenland that I'd like to sell you. AB wants to get paid. Gruden wants to prove that he is more than a Frank Caliendo caricature. They're going to work seamlessly for at least a season, and I have a feeling that AB is going to like living in Las Vegas. Highlight of the episode was Gruden trolling Renfro with that combine photo. Rook is getting crushed and seems to be taking it in stride. I don't think he should be taking hairline jokes from Derek Carr's hairline, but I guess he needs to throw him the ball. Honorable mention is Gruden making fun of Glennon's huge neck. The Eagles had a couple of dudes with some interesting names. That is an unfortunate-looking dude with millions of dollars in the bank. Classic Hard Knocks formula introduces us to the redemption story of Darren Waller. If I had $1 for every ex-basketball player that some arrogant coach thinks they can turn into the next Tony G, don't get me wrong, I'm rooting for Waller, but he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that is interested in the finer points of playing football. Pretty sure he makes the roster, but there's no way Luke Wilson or Keelan Doss make the 53. Other than that, I think everyone that was hoping Perfect Incognito and Chucky were going to kidnap and murder AB are getting pretty disappointed in the very little drama thus far this season, but I'm sure Screamin' A will tweet something that will tide them over until the season starts. The soundtrack has been solid too. That is a real good breakdown of Hard Knocks, but I will add to this. Gruden definitely appears, and whether it's truthful or not, by the videotape that we're being presented, Gruden appears to be nothing but supportive of everything that AB has been doing to this particular point. Mayock, on the other hand, Mayock, when he said he's got to be all in or all out, did not sound like a guy that was being supportive. He sounded like a guy that was throwing out an ultimatum, like, dude, get your crap together and get to practice. I definitely did not hear Mayock being like all, kumbaya with the AB thing. That was sort of my thoughts on it. They focused a lot on his feet. They focused a little bit on the helmet. I still don't think they gave us enough of what's going on, but I heard the official Hard Knocks podcast, the executive director of Hard Knocks basically come on and say, like, look, we're documentarians, and we're here to document training camp of the Oakland Raiders. We're not here to, dedicate a camera crew to Antonio Brown for 24 hours when there's a court case going on 3,000 miles away in New York about his helmet. That's just not something that we're hired to do. We're hired to document what's happening at training camp. And if AB is not at training camp, which he wasn't for most of the time, then they can't document him. They can't film him. They can't get any sort of reaction. And the guy said, the guys that are at practice are talking about practice. They're not talking about AB. They're talking about making the team. There's 90 other guys all struggling to make the Oakland Raiders, and that's sort of what they're doing. Now, at the same time, you've got this thing that's happening in the news, and everybody expects, because they've got all this access, that we're going to get a little bit more of that behind the scenes. And we got a little bit of it. I think there's just a little bit of a disappointment that it seems to be boring. And the guys that they're showing us, with the exception of Darren Waller, are guys that aren't even going to make the roster. James?
I agree with you up to a certain point. There is friction there, but it's not in the locker room. It's definitely between probably somewhere in that front office, helmed by Mike Mayock. He's pretty much flat out done with the entire situation or anything revolving around AB not being at practice. He's at his wit's end. He's hit his limit. And that just looked like him finally snapping and just using the media to do so. As far as John Gruden, this looks like a very watered down version of John Gruden that we've come to know over the past, 10 years or so that he was in the booth in Monday Night Football. He seems more so reserved and I don't want to say closed off, but just not completely himself. Like all the antics and things that we've come to know of John Gruden, this doesn't look like the John Gruden we've come to know over the years. As far as Antonio Brown, I can care less one way or the other. Whether he's there or not makes no difference. But yes, so far this entire season has been dry. And it has nothing to do with Antonio Brown. It's just not the personalities we expected to see this season haven't shown themselves on Hard Knocks. It wasn't like last season with Cleveland where guys looked like they were free to be themselves and there was a lot to pretty much squeeze into an hour cut of a week's time in training camp between the coaching staff and the players. And so far this season, we've got nothing of interest to satiate our salivation for any type of excitement of anything outside of, the generic practices they go through, anything like that. I mean, yeah, the Caliendo stuff was funny. Ripping Renfro was entertaining,
Hunter Renfro being the punchline to every joke, though, it's starting to get old.
It is, and that's the thing. Is like they're beating a dead horse by doing the same jokes over and over and over again. I figured after the first preseason game we get more of Jonathan Abram, but this he wasn't in last week's episode, but he showed up. I mean, they did a little bit on him in this week for maybe 5 minutes, and it wasn't even directly him. It was focusing on someone else, and he just happened to be there.
Right.
So I'm not really feeling the season of Hard Knocks. It's like, yeah, let's get the Raiders because we have all these big personalities that should provide a lot of content. But aside from AB not being present all the time, the remaining personalities are not showing themselves.
Do we think too? I mean, think about how long it took them to finally get a team to be featured in Hard Knocks. Do you think maybe they're doing this on purpose? Make a boring season so that we don't have to worry about this moving forward. We don't have to. Nobody wants to do this, so let's make a boring season so we kill the demand side for this show, and then we don't have to worry about it moving forward.
In case you didn't remember, the commissioner of the NFL is not a genius, so thinking is not really his strong suit. I don't know what the contract commitment is between the league and HBO, but Hard Knocks is not going anywhere. And again, as long as teams are voluntold to do it, this is pretty much what we'll get. I get everybody, like last year's season with Cleveland was probably one of the better seasons of Hard Knocks since they've done it. Probably since who was
Dallas.
Rex Ryan coaching when he was on there?
The Jets.
So probably since then. But you're not going to get consistent entertainment year in and year out, especially when, the teams that you volunteer to do this don't follow suit as far as what your expectations are. And granted, I think ultimately this is going to come down to the Raiders and Washington, and I kind of wish they chose Washington at this point.
Yeah, well, the Trent Williams thing is definitely more interesting. All right, Justin, you there now?
Oh yeah, I never went anywhere.
Oh, we heard you. We heard you bouncing in and out. So you can't lie. The little dings that people heard on this podcast show that you weren't here 100% of the time.
That's fake CG.
Oh, okay, fair enough. All right, what did Monty and Brian have to say about this game in Winnipeg?
Well, Monty's not thrilled about it being in Winnipeg. He has a profanity-laced tirade about Mexico City, London twice, and Canada, which I'm going to save you bleeping me out at a later date. We've already talked a lot about.
I just want to add, he said in order to get the owners to vote for relocation. It's not so much just about the relocation. It's the fact that they didn't have a deal with Oakland Stadium. Like Oakland, their rent was done. The lease was up. They had to go play somewhere. So what better place, what better way to show off the NFL than send the Raiders to all these other cities, international cities, so that they don't have to play in Oakland Stadium?
I could think of a lot better ways to show off the NFL than sending the Raiders to people. He's going to keep his eyes, of course, on the backup quarterbacks. We have human giraffe hybrid Mike Glennon with a 12-foot tall neck, and 5-pick Peterman, who is believe it or not worse than he sounds. And so if they ever lose Derek Carr, who by the way is not that great, they're screwed. So they're screwed. there is a lot of talk about the offensive line, who has been bad. There's a lot of